A 21-year-old who had already beaten this exact opponent twice in the span of 2 months walked onto Louis Armstrong Stadium, jumped out to a 40-15 lead in the very first game, and then watched the entire match get taken away from her in 39 minutes flat. And if you want to understand how that happens on one of the biggest courts in tennis, you need to hear what actually took place, point by point. Because this was not a normal loss, this was a complete tactical reversal in real time. This is the story of Alex and Félix Auger-Aliassime against the husband and wife team of Eala Svitolina and Monfils in the first round of the newly reinvented US Open mixed doubles event. And it is one of those matches that tells you far more about the sport than the final scoreline ever could. Before we even get into the tennis, you have to understand what kind of stage this was, because the US Open didn't just add a mixed doubles bracket as an afterthought this year. They rebuilt the entire thing from the ground up. 16 teams, a fast four format designed to compress the physical grind into short, explosive bursts, everything packed into a 2-day window during Fan Week before the singles tournament fully takes over the grounds, and a prize pool of $2.88 million with a full $1 million waiting for whichever team walks away as champions. That kind of money changes everything about who shows up. Suddenly, you are not just getting doubles specialists. You are getting Serena Williams and Carlos Alcaraz on the same side of the net. You are getting Novak Djokovic pairing up with Aryna Sabalenka. And you are getting a 16-team field where literally any match could be the headline of the day. Which brings us to the specific pairing everyone in the Philippines and a huge chunk of the tennis world had circled on their calendar. Alex, the rising Filipina star, who has spent this entire season methodically taking down some of the best players alive, teaming up with Félix Auger-Aliassime, the Canadian world number 4, who was walking into this event as one of the most dangerous singles threats left in the draw. Standing across the net from them, a genuine tennis power couple. Eala Svitolina, the Ukrainian veteran who has spent years among the elite of the sport, and her husband, Monfils, the French showman known for his athleticism and his flair, playing together in a Grand Slam mixed doubles match for what Monfils would later admit was likely a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Now, here is where the story gets its real edge, the part that turns this from just another first-round match into something with genuine emotional weight. This was not two random teams meeting for the first time. There was history here, and recent history at that. Just weeks before this US Open encounter, Alex had already beaten Svitolina not once, but twice. First on the grass at the Berlin Tennis Open, where she knocked out the 6th-seeded Svitolina 6-3, 6-4 to reach her first WTA 500 semifinal, a result she called an honor, given how long she had admired Svitolina growing up. Then barely a month later, she did it again at the Mubadala DC Open in Washington, this time on a hard court, beating the same opponent by the exact same scoreline of 6-3, 6-4 to reach the semifinals there as well. 2 wins over the same top 10 opponent inside of about 6 weeks, part of a run that saw Alex collect her 6th top 10 victory of the season and push her career record against top 10 players to an outstanding 8 wins and 4 losses. Think about what that means from Svitolina's perspective for a second. You are a former world number 3, a proven Grand Slam caliber competitor, and you keep running into the same rising 21-year-old. And she keeps beating you in straight sets, in the same scoreline, on different surfaces. That is not just a loss. That is the kind of pattern that starts to live in your head. So when the draw for this mixed doubles event paired Svitolina and Monfils playing together as a wildcard entry against Alex and Félix, there was an obvious storyline sitting right there in plain sight. Was this finally going to be the moment Svitolina turned the tables? This time with her husband's firepower behind her? Or was Alex about to prove that her dominance over the veteran translated across formats, across partners, even onto the mixed doubles court? For about 4 minutes, it looked like there was only one possible answer. Alex and Félix came out of the gates like they had something to prove. And honestly, they probably did. The velocity on their ground strokes from the very first point was immediate and unmistakable. They were dictating depth, pushing Svitolina and Monfils several feet behind the baseline, taking away any rhythm before the veterans could even find their footing on the court. It became 40-15 almost before the crowd had settled into their seats. And then Félix, the world number 4, slammed home an unreturnable ace to close out that opening game. Louis Armstrong Stadium erupted. For that one moment, it genuinely felt like we were about to watch a changing of the guard live in front of us. The same story that had played out in Berlin and in Washington simply repeating itself on the biggest stage in the sport. But tennis, and especially this particular format of tennis, has a cruel habit of punishing teams that peak too early. The Fast Four format that the USTA built for this event compresses matches into short 4-game sets, which means every single point instantly carries far more weight than it would in a traditional match. There is no cushion. There is no time to slowly find your range again after a rough patch. You either solve the problem immediately, or the set is already gone before you've even worked out what went wrong. And this is exactly where Svitolina and Monfils separated themselves from almost everyone else in this draw. Because instead of trying to match power with power, instead of trying to out-hit two players who were clearly playing with house money and pure aggression, the married couple did something far smarter. They tightened everything up. They leaned entirely on chemistry, court sense, and above all, elite serving. And in a format this short, elite serving is close to unbeatable. Over the full 39 minutes of this match, Svitolina and Monfils won every single one of their first serve points. Not most of them, all of them. A perfect record on their opening deliveries throughout the entire contest. When you are staring across the net at opponents who are not missing a single first serve point, the psychological pressure on your own service games compounds with every passing minute, because you start to feel like you cannot afford even one loose point, one sloppy shot, one moment of hesitation. And that pressure eventually found its way to Félix. Alex and Félix actually generated some genuinely eye-catching numbers of their own across the match. 3 aces and 9 total winners. Numbers that in a normal best-of-3 format would be more than enough to keep you firmly in control. But they also produced 8 unforced errors. And in a Fast Four format, 8 unforced errors is not a minor blemish. It's closer to a fatal wound. Because there simply are not enough games in a set to absorb that many mistakes and still come out ahead. The turning point arrived in the 5th game of the first set, with the score having flipped completely from that early 1-love lead in games. The pressure of the moment led to a costly double fault from Félix, handing Svitolina and Monfils the break they needed to close out the first set 4-1. Think about the swing there. 15 minutes earlier, the crowd was on its feet, watching a 21-year-old's continued reign over a former top 3 player. Now they were watching a clinical, almost surgical dismantling unfold in real time, with Monfils finding his targets at the net with total confidence and Svitolina absorbing pace from the baseline like she had unlimited patience to burn. Heading into the second set, Alex and Félix did not fold. And this matters, because it would have been easy for a young pairing to simply mail in the rest of the match after getting run over like that. Instead, they dug back in, held their own serve, and actually managed to drag the second set back to 1 game apiece, generating a legitimate glimmer of hope that the momentum could swing back in their direction one more time. You could see it on Alex's face, the same competitive fire that had already carried her past Svitolina twice this season, refusing to accept that this was simply how the story ended. Félix, too, was playing with something extra on his shoulders in this match, given that he had emerged as essentially the last realistic Canadian hope remaining in the mixed doubles draw at that stage of the tournament. adding just a little more weight to every single swing of his racket. But Svitolina and Monfils were playing at a level that simply would not crack. After that 1-all tie, the married couple reeled off 3 consecutive games to seal the match, with Svitolina continuing to function as an absolute wall along the baseline, redirecting pace into uncomfortable areas of the court, and Monfils cleaning up everything that came anywhere near the net with his signature athleticism. The deciding game produced one final dramatic exchange, a genuinely thrilling rally that had the entire stadium leaning forward, before a desperate return from Félix sailed just wide of the doubles alley, sealing the second set and the match by an identical 4-1 scoreline. Final result, Svitolina and Monfils, 4-1, 4-1, in just 39 minutes of tennis. 39 minutes. Think about that for a second. An entire match, complete with a wild opening game explosion, a full tactical collapse and recovery, and a tense closing rally, all wrapped up before most people even finish their first coffee. That is the beautiful chaos this new format was built to create. And on this particular Tuesday at Louis Armstrong Stadium, it delivered exactly that. Now, let's talk about what actually happened once the dust settled, because the reactions afterward tell you just as much about this story as the tennis itself. Svitolina and Monfils stuck around to speak to the fans who had shown up. In Svitolina's words, remarkably early in the day, and she made a point of saying how happy she was simply to finally get the chance to share a court with her husband in this kind of setting, adding that the two of them were trying to stay focused while also genuinely having fun with the experience. Monfils, for his part, admitted there had been real pressure carrying the weight of playing his first competitive match alongside his wife. But he felt like he handled that pressure well, and he even joked afterward, once their run continued deeper into the tournament, that this was probably going to be the first and the last time he ever plays mixed doubles with her, which tells you something about just how unusual and high stakes this entire experience felt, even for a player with his level of experience. For Alex and Félix, the outcome is obviously a tough pill to swallow. An early exit from an event with genuine prize money and genuine prestige on the line. But context matters enormously here. This was a first-round exit against a team that would go on to prove they were not just riding a wave of good fortune. Later that very same day, Svitolina and Monfils returned to the court and knocked off the pairing of Katerina Siniakova and Henry Patton, the mixed doubles world #1 team, in a tight 3-set battle that went the distance, 5-4, 4-5, and then a deciding match tiebreak that Svitolina and Monfils closed out 10-8, punching their ticket into the semifinals. So this was not a case of Alex and Félix losing to a team that got lucky and then disappeared. They lost to a team that went on to beat the single best doubles pairing left in the entire draw. That context reframes the entire match. It does not erase the disappointment of the loss, but it tells you clearly that Svitolina and Monfils were playing genuinely elite tennis that day, not just riding an emotional high from finally sharing a court together. And speaking of Siniakova and Patton, their involvement in this story actually connects to one of the single biggest shocks of the entire tournament. Because earlier that same day, the top-seeded pairing in this event, based on combined singles ranking, was eliminated in the very first round. And that top seed was Novak Djokovic and Aryna Sabalenka. Yes, you read that correctly. A 24-time Grand Slam singles champion and one of the most dominant women's players on tour right now, teaming up as the #1 seed in this brand-new marquee event, and getting sent home before the tournament even reached its second day. Djokovic and Sabalenka actually raced out to a strong start, cruising through the opening set 4-1, looking every bit like the superstar pairing the USTA had been hoping to showcase. But Siniakova and Patton, both elite specialists in actual doubles play, slowly clawed their way back, leveling the match by winning the second set 4-2, before completely taking over in the deciding tiebreak closing it out 10 points to 2, with Siniakova famously firing an ace directly past Djokovic on match point to seal the win. It is one of the more humbling reminders in recent tennis memory that being one of the greatest singles players who has ever lived does not automatically translate into instant doubles chemistry, especially not in a format this fast and this unforgiving of even small technical gaps. So on the very same day, in the very same building, two of the sport's most decorated singles champions were sent packing by dedicated doubles professionals, while a genuine husband and wife, pairing with far less doubles pedigree between them, somehow found the exact formula needed to survive and then thrive. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about how unpredictable this new mixed doubles format has become, honestly, nothing will. Now, stepping back and looking at the bigger picture here, what does this all actually mean going forward, both for Alex specifically and for the sport as a whole? Let's start with Alex, because her story here is genuinely more nuanced than a simple loss. Heading into this US Open, she arrived with a career-high WTA ranking of 18, officially making her the highest-ranked Southeast Asian player in the history of the WTA rankings. A milestone that speaks volumes about the trajectory she has been on all year. She is 21 years old, and she has already built a resume of wins over multiple top 10 opponents this season. Wins that were not flukes, wins that came with real tactical substance behind them, including that back-to-back domination of Svitolina in Berlin and then again in Washington. One difficult 39-minute mixed doubles match in a wildly unpredictable Fast Four format designed specifically to produce chaotic upsets does not undo any of that progress. If anything, it adds another layer to her story, because now there is a natural follow-up question hanging in the air for the rest of this tournament and beyond. Does Svitolina finally have Alex's number again, heading into any future singles meetings between the two of them? Or was this simply a case of Svitolina and Monfils finding perfect chemistry in a format built for chaos? A format where being a proven singles killer sometimes matters less than simply serving well for 39 consecutive minutes? That is a genuinely fascinating subplot to watch unfold the next time these two share a singles court. And given how frequently their paths have crossed already this season, you have to imagine that next meeting is not too far away. For Felix, the disappointment is real, but his attention now shifts entirely toward the singles draw, where he remains one of the more dangerous competitors on the hard courts of Flushing Meadows, and a tough mixed doubles exit, especially one decided by such fine margins in the closing moments, is unlikely to carry over into how he approaches his singles campaign. If anything, players in his position often use an early doubles exit as extra rest, extra recovery time, and extra motivation heading into the tournament that actually determines the bulk of their season. And then there is the format itself, which deserves its own moment of reflection here, because what we watched unfold across Louis Armstrong Stadium that day was really a showcase for exactly what the USTA was hoping to build when they redesigned this event. A format short enough to fit blockbuster stars into a two-day sprint before the main draw takes over. A prize pool large enough to genuinely tempt legends like Serena Williams and Novak Djokovic away from simply resting before their singles campaigns begin. And a level of unpredictability so extreme that pedigree and singles ranking essentially mean nothing if you cannot find instant chemistry with your partner from the very first point. Djokovic and Sabalenka discovered that the hard way. Alex and Felix discovered a slightly gentler version of that same lesson, jumping out to an electric start built purely on individual talent before getting systematically dismantled by two players who simply understood each other's games at a level that raw power alone could not overcome. Svitolina and Monfils, meanwhile, are proof of the opposite lesson, that genuine partnership